The rain had been falling for hours, washing the streets of West Haven in a soft gray haze. Inside the tall white house at the end of Hawthorne Street, laughter and music drifted through the open windows. The kind of sounds that made neighbors pause and smile, thinking of a family that seemed, from the outside, perfectly happy. But in the narrow servants' quarters behind the main house, a little girl with tangled black curls sat quietly on the edge of a small iron bed, clutching a worn-out doll. Her name was Isla, and at 4 years old, she already knew the meaning of loneliness. Her mother, Maribel, had worked for the Caraway family for as long as anyone could remember. She was there when the 2 Caraway sons were born, and again when their twin daughters arrived a few years later. She cooked their meals, washed their clothes, tucked the children into bed when their parents were out late at charity dinners, and in every way but name was part of their family. But that inclusion didn't stretch far enough to her little girl. Isla was a shadow in the hallways, quiet and careful, taught to stay out of sight whenever the Caraways had guests. She learned to read by peeking over the shoulders of the Caraway children during their tutoring sessions, tracing letters on her palm in secret until the shapes made sense. Everything changed one bright spring morning. Maribel had been coughing for weeks, but she brushed it off as a simple cold. "I can't take a day off," she'd told Isla with a tired smile. "The house won't clean itself, sweetheart." But by the time she collapsed in the kitchen, the diagnosis was too late. A rare and aggressive illness that gave her less than a month to live. The Caraways tried, in their way, to help. Mrs. Caraway paid for the hospital bills, and Mr. Caraway made promises that sounded kind, even if they were hollow. And when Maribel passed away on a quiet Thursday evening, Isla's world tilted so far off its axis she couldn't find her balance again. She remembered clinging to her mother's hand until the nurses gently pried her small fingers away. She remembered the way the house felt emptier than ever when she returned, even though the family went about their evening as if nothing had changed. "She'll stay with us," Mrs. Caraway said at dinner that night, her tone brisk and decisive. "At least until we figure out what's next." But what's next never really came. At first, Isla tried to stay invisible the way her mother had taught her. She helped in the kitchen, folded laundry, and never complained. But children grow, and silence only carries them so far. By the time Isla turned 9, she was sharing jokes with the twins, helping them with homework, and running barefoot through the backyard in the summers. The house felt like a strange kind of home. Not hers, not exactly, but close enough that she almost forgot her place. Still, there were reminders. The twins had separate bedrooms, while Isla still slept in the narrow cot behind the laundry room. At Christmas, the Caraway children opened piles of shiny boxes, while Isla got a single-wrapped sweater. Always practical, always useful. And when relatives visited, Mrs. Caraway would introduce her as Maribel's little girl, a subtle reminder that she was never truly one of them. Years passed. The boys left for college. The twins grew into restless teenagers with loud music and sharper words. And Isla, caught between the edges of childhood and adulthood, learned to adapt. She excelled in school, fueled by a quiet determination to build something better for herself. Her teachers saw the spark in her, a girl with sharp eyes and a mind hungry for more. But at home, she was still just the help's daughter. Then, the summer she turned 18, everything began to unravel. Mr. Caraway passed away suddenly, a heart attack in the middle of a golf game that left the family spinning. The house grew quieter, heavier. Mrs. Caraway, once brisk and commanding, seemed to shrink in on herself, her laughter fading into whispers behind closed doors. By the time Mrs. Caraway followed her husband to the grave 3 years later, Isla was 21 and working part-time while finishing her degree. The funeral was small. The sons flew in for a weekend, standing stiffly by the graveside before retreating back to their own lives. The twins cried, but their grief was tangled with something else. Fear, maybe, or the sharp realization that everything was about to change. And change it did. The house, which had always felt eternal, was suddenly just a property, an asset to be divided. The Caraway siblings, now adults with their own struggles, gathered in the echoing dining room one last time. Isla sat at the edge of the room, silent, as the conversation shifted from memories to numbers. "You know, Mom and Dad left the house to Jonah," one of the brothers said, his tone final. "The rest of us got our share of the accounts. It's fair." Jonah, the eldest, didn't look at her when he nodded. "I'm putting it up for sale," he said simply. "It's time to move on." The words hit her like cold water, though she tried to keep her face still. This house, the only home she'd ever known, was about to be sold. And with it, the last fragile thread tying her to the life she'd built there. Later that night, when the others were gone, Isla found Jonah in the kitchen. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling despite her efforts. Jonah hesitated, his expression unreadable. "You're an adult now, Isla. You'll figure it out. Maybe we can help with a little cash, just to get you started. But I can't let you stay. I need to sell the place. I need to let go." She nodded, though her stomach twisted with something sharp and hot, a mix of hurt, fear, and something that felt dangerously close to betrayal. For years, she had been the quiet shadow of this family, the girl who grew up alongside them, but never truly with them. And now, as the walls closed in, she realized she had no place left to stand. And so, with no plan, no savings, and no family to claim her, Isla packed her life into 2 battered suitcases and stepped out of the only home she had ever known, into a world that didn't feel ready to catch her. But if life had taught Isla anything, it was this. The world never waited for permission to change. The city smelled different from anything Isla had known. The streets of Larkspur were filled with the roar of buses, the tang of street food, and the distant hum of construction. It was loud, it was chaotic, and it was completely unwelcoming to someone like her. Someone who had spent her entire life in the shadow of wealth she was never allowed to touch. She had no friends here, no connections, just 2 suitcases and a fragile sense of determination that something inside her refused to break. The first night, she found a cheap hostel on the edge of the city, the kind with peeling paint and the faint smell of mildew. She lay on the thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if she had made a mistake leaving. But as the hours passed, she realized there was no going back. The Caraway house, with its polished floors and endless rooms, was gone. Her childhood had been tucked away in memory, locked behind the doors she had once quietly peeked through. Now the world was hers, terrifying, but hers. The next morning, she ventured out to find work. Isla had experience in every kind of household task imaginable: cleaning, cooking, childcare. But she knew she needed something more stable, something that could help her build her own life. She passed storefronts and office buildings, her eyes scanning every help-wanted sign. Most required references she didn't have, or experience in jobs she hadn't done. Rejection piled up like bricks on her chest. It was on the 3rd day that she found it, a small law firm tucked between a coffee shop and a florist. They were hiring an administrative assistant. Isla didn't have legal experience, but she had learned to be meticulous, to notice details, and to follow instructions. Skills honed from years of watching the Caraway children and cleaning their meticulous home. She walked in, took a deep breath, and handed over her resume. The interviewer, a woman with sharp glasses and a no-nonsense expression, glanced over it. "You've been in household management?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. I've managed schedules, finances, and operations for a family household. I can type, file, organize, anything you need," Isla said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the quiver in her chest. The woman studied her for a moment and then nodded. "We can train you. Report Monday." It wasn't the job of her dreams, but it was a start. Isla threw herself into it, arriving early and leaving late, absorbing everything she could about filing, correspondence, and court procedures. Her colleagues noticed her diligence, though no one knew her story. They just saw a quiet, hard-working young woman who never complained and always delivered. Despite her success, loneliness was her constant companion. She missed the small, familiar rhythms of the Carraway house. The smell of Mrs. Carraway's morning coffee, the laughter of the twins running through the halls. She missed her mother most of all, the gentle touch and words that had once been her whole world. Isla tried to make friends. She joined a book club at a local library and started attending evening yoga classes. Occasionally, she would meet other young professionals for coffee, laughing and chatting, trying to blend into a life that felt alien. But the feeling of being watched, of being perpetually an outsider, never left her. 2 years passed. Isla had moved from the hostel to a small studio apartment, its walls decorated with books she had salvaged from thrift stores and sketches she made in quiet moments. She had a routine: wake up, work, cook, sleep, and it was enough to keep her afloat. Then came the day that would shake her foundation again. She was walking home from work when she passed a familiar cafe on Elm Street. Inside, the light hit a man reading a newspaper, and she froze. Jonah Carraway. He looked the same, a little older, a little wearier, but unmistakable. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world contracted. Memories of the house, the laughter, the silences, all collided at once. He stood, hesitant. "Isla," he said softly. "Jonah," she replied, her voice steady even though her heart pounded. They walked down the street together, words careful at first, then spilling over as they caught up. He explained the sale of the house, the dispersal of the family's wealth, the quiet unraveling of the Carraway family after their parents died. Isla listened, her emotions tangled. There was anger, yes, and a sense of betrayal, but also an odd, lingering warmth. A reminder that despite everything, she had been part of something larger once. Jonah paused, looking at her with something like guilt in his eyes. "I never meant for it to end like this," he said. I just couldn't handle being responsible for you. I thought you could make it on your own, and I guess I wanted you to, but I know it didn't feel fair." Isla nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm surviving," she said. "That's what matters." The encounter left her shaken, but also strangely empowered. She realized that while the Carraways had given her structure, they had also given her independence, albeit reluctantly. The world outside, with all its unpredictability and cruelty, was hers to navigate. The months that followed were a blur of work and small victories. Isla enrolled in night classes at the local university, studying law, inspired in part by her conversation with Jonah. She wanted to understand the world, to claim a place where no one could ever make her feel like an outsider again. Yet life had more trials in store. Her first serious relationship ended painfully, her trust shattered. She battled health scares and financial crises. But every setback hardened her resolve rather than breaking it. By the time she turned 25, Isla had grown into a woman who carried her past like armor, not heavy enough to weigh her down, but sharp enough to protect her. It was in these years that Isla learned the most important lesson her mother had ever tried to teach her. Your worth isn't measured by where you start, but by how far you're willing to go when the world tries to push you down. And push her down, the world often did. Yet Isla had learned to rise every single time, one careful, deliberate step after another. Isla had spent years building a life she could call her own, but the world had a way of reminding her that the past never truly leaves. At 26, she was a rising star at the law firm, her meticulous attention to detail and unwavering work ethic earning her the respect of her superiors. She had a small circle of friends now, people who admired her tenacity but had no idea about the childhood she carried like a secret badge. But the Caraway family's shadow was never far behind. Jonah reached out sporadically, sometimes with casual messages, sometimes with news of distant family matters. Each message stirred memories. The smell of polished wood floors, the soft cadence of Mrs. Caraway's voice, the faint laughter of twins racing through endless hallways. These reminders were bittersweet. They grounded her, but also made her pulse with a quiet, persistent ache. Then, one crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived at her apartment. It bore the Caraway seal and a sense of weight that made her stomach tighten before she even opened it. The letter detailed the final decision regarding the family estate. Jonah and his siblings were planning to sell the house and had arranged for all assets to be liquidated. Isla's heart sank. The house was gone, not just physically but symbolically, severing the last thread that tied her to her childhood and to the life she had once thought was hers. Yet amid this upheaval, a spark ignited within her. She realized that while the Caraway house had shaped her early life, it didn't define the woman she had become. She had a degree in law, a stable career, and a determination to carve her own path. The house was theirs. Her life was hers. At work, she poured herself into a complex case, a small family dispute that had escalated into a tangled legal nightmare. Her ability to empathize, honed by years of observing human behavior in the Caraway household, gave her an edge. She could anticipate arguments, foresee pitfalls, and guide her clients toward solutions that were both fair and sustainable. But personal life, as always, proved more challenging. Isla had met Ethan, a young architect with a gentle smile and an uncanny ability to make her laugh. Their relationship blossomed slowly, a quiet counterpoint to the chaos she had endured. Yet even with love blooming, there were nights when she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the specter of abandonment and the life she had been forced to fight for. One evening, Ethan found her on the balcony of her small apartment, the city lights twinkling below. "You carry so much weight, Isla," he said softly, resting a hand on her shoulder. "I know," she whispered, "but I've learned that weight doesn't have to break me. It can make me stronger if I let it." Her words were not bravado. They were truth born from years of hardship. She had survived poverty, loss, and betrayal. She had left the house that once felt like both sanctuary and prison, stepping into a world that demanded more than she had ever known. And she had not only survived, she had thrived. Months turned into a year, and the Caraway house officially changed hands. Photos of the sold property appeared online, a silent confirmation that the past was now irretrievably behind her. Surprisingly, Isla felt a quiet sense of liberation. The house had been both a cradle and a cage, and now it was neither. Now, professional success came with its own challenges. A new partner at the firm questioned her strategies, pushing her to defend her methods and decisions. Each confrontation reminded her that the world didn't reward sentimentality. It rewarded skill, perseverance, and the courage to act decisively. Isla responded with calm precision, her confidence growing with every victory. In her personal life, she faced small heartbreaks and victories alike. A close friend moved away, leaving her apartment quieter than before. Yet she found solace in small rituals. Morning coffee brewed to perfection, sketches of architectural structures she admired, quiet dinners with Ethan where conversation flowed easily. Then, one day, Jonah reappeared unexpectedly. He had come to the city on business and insisted on meeting her. The meeting was tense at first, a collision of past and present, of gratitude and resentment, of memories long buried and emotions freshly unearthed. "I wanted to see how you're doing," Jonah said, avoiding her eyes. I know things were complicated. I just hope you found your footing." "I have," Isla replied, her voice steady. "It's been hard, but I'm standing on my own now. The house is gone, and that's okay. I've built something for myself." Jonah nodded slowly, as if absorbing the full weight of her words. For the first time, she felt a sense of closure, not from the house, not from him, but from the recognition that her life was hers alone to shape. The days that followed brought new opportunities. Isla was invited to speak at a local community center about resilience and self-advocacy, sharing her story with young women who had faced similar struggles. Each session was a reminder that her experiences, once a source of pain, could now serve as guidance and inspiration for others. As the city moved through seasons, Isla's life found a rhythm that was uniquely hers. She had a career she loved, a partner who supported her, and a sense of self-worth that no one could take away. The past remained a part of her, a shadow, a memory, a teacher, but it no longer defined her path. And in those quiet moments, when she paused to reflect on the journey from the servant quarters of the Caraway house to her own apartment overlooking the city, Isla understood a truth her mother had always tried to teach her. Strength isn't given, it's forged in the fires of life. And the measure of a person is how they rise after the world tries to cast them down. Life had begun to settle into a rhythm for Isla. But stability, she had learned, was often fleeting. By the time she reached 28, she had established herself as a competent attorney at a mid-sized law firm, known for her precision and unwavering dedication. Yet, despite her professional success, the ghost of her past occasionally surfaced in unexpected ways, reminding her that the Caraway house and the life she had left behind were never truly gone. It started with a letter, an official notice regarding a small inheritance left by a distant relative of the Caraways. The documents were confusing at first, detailing property and finances Isla had never known existed. They mentioned her mother, Maribel, and the care she had provided to the Caraway children. For a brief moment, Isla felt a strange surge of vindication, an acknowledgement that her mother's sacrifices had not gone entirely unnoticed. But the victory was short-lived. The Caraway siblings had moved on entirely, their lives neatly compartmentalized, leaving Isla once again at the edge of everything she had known. The legal proceedings were tedious, fraught with challenges that tested not just her intellect, but her emotional resilience. She spent long nights in the office, poring over contracts, gathering evidence, and drafting motions, her mind oscillating between the present and the shadows of the past. During this period, her personal life underwent turbulence as well. Ethan, whose quiet presence had been a stabilizing force for years, began to pull away. His architectural projects demanded more travel, and Ayla's late nights at the firm strained their connection. The separation, though temporary, forced her to confront a reality she had long avoided. Independence often came with loneliness. Yet through it all, Isla's resolve only hardened. She began mentoring young women from underprivileged backgrounds, offering guidance not just in legal matters, but in life, navigating obstacles, asserting their rights, and understanding the value of perseverance. Each success, each story of a young woman rising above her circumstances, reminded Isla of her own journey, reinforcing the belief that the scars of the past could be transformed into strength. One crisp winter morning, an unexpected encounter tested her resolve further. She ran into Lydia, a former classmate who had grown up in a similarly affluent household, yet had never known hardship. Lydia's life seemed effortless, and her casual remarks about family legacies and wealth stirred something uncomfortable in Isla. "It must be nice," Lydia said lightly, "to have connections that make life easier." Isla smiled politely, hiding the storm of emotions inside her. She had learned early that bitterness was a luxury she could not afford. Instead, she channeled her energy into action, taking on high-profile cases that challenged her intellect and morality. Each case was more than a professional challenge. It was a personal affirmation that she could succeed without leaning on anyone else's influence or inheritance. Amid these challenges, the news of the Caraway house's final sale reached her. The mansion, once brimming with the laughter and cries of childhood, was now a polished investment property. For a moment, Isla felt a pang of loss, but it was tempered by pride. She had survived. She had stepped out of the shadow of the house, and in doing so, had claimed her own space in the world. Then came the unexpected twist. A meeting with Jonah Caraway, now older and wearier, who had faced his own trials in the years since the house had been sold. He sought Isla's counsel on a legal matter, recognizing her skill and integrity. The encounter was layered with complexity, gratitude, tension, unspoken apologies, and reminded Isla of the delicate balance between the past and the present. Through these years, Isla's life became a tapestry of triumphs and trials. She celebrated victories at the firm, nurtured deep friendships, and slowly rebuilt her relationship with Ethan. Each step forward reinforced a lesson she had learned long ago. The world does not owe her kindness, but it does reward resilience and courage. By 30, Isla had emerged as a figure of quiet authority, her reputation solidified by years of hard work and unwavering commitment. She often reflected on the young girl who had once clutched a doll in the Caraway servant quarters, a girl who had felt invisible, unwanted, and powerless. The transformation was profound, yet the memory remained, a reminder of the journey she had endured and the woman she had become. One evening, sitting on her apartment balcony, Isla looked out over the city lights. The skyline shimmered with possibilities, each building a testament to human ambition, struggle, and achievement. She thought of her mother, of the sacrifices that had shaped her path, and whispered a quiet promise to honor that legacy by living fully, courageously, and without regret. And Isla understood now more than ever that life's trials were not punishments, but shaping forces. Every loss, every moment of fear, every challenge had carved her into the person she was meant to be. And though the Caraway house and the childhood she had left behind were gone, the strength and wisdom she carried were hers to keep, unshakable and enduring. By the time Isla turned 31, she had built a life that, in every sense, belonged to her. The small studio apartment where she had once clutched her savings now felt like a home, filled with carefully chosen books, sketches of architectural marvels, and photos capturing the quiet victories of her journey. Every corner told a story of resilience, each item a symbol of the battles she had survived and won. Ethan had returned after months of travel, his work completed abroad. And this time, they approached their relationship with renewed patience and understanding. No longer was she the girl shadowed by wealth she could never touch. She was a woman, confident and unyielding, capable of standing beside him as an equal, rather than in silent admiration. The professional challenges she had faced in previous years now became stepping stones. She was promoted to senior attorney at her firm, earning recognition not just for her intellect, but for her integrity and her ability to see beyond the surface, to understand people and their stories. Her past, the hours spent cleaning, observing, and quietly learning in the Caraway house, had become a unique advantage, a foundation she could never have anticipated. Yet it was the unexpected encounters with her past that shaped the final phase of her journey. Jonah Caraway reached out once more, not with family disputes or property concerns, but with genuine respect. "I want you to know," he said one afternoon over coffee in a quiet downtown cafe, "that everything we did, every decision we made, was complicated. But I've always admired your strength. You've done more than I ever expected you could." Isla nodded, feeling a wave of closure she hadn't known she needed. "Thank you," she replied. "I've had to fight for every step, but it made me who I am. That's all that matters." In the following months, Isla began giving back in ways she had only dreamed of. She started a mentorship program for young women from disadvantaged backgrounds, teaching them not only legal skills, but resilience, self-worth, and the power of carving their own path. Each story she heard, each young woman she guided, reflected a fragment of her own journey, a reminder that the hardships of the past could be transformed into empowerment and hope. Her personal life flourished alongside her career. Ethan proposed one evening under the soft glow of string lights in their courtyard, and Isla said yes, smiling with a sense of certainty she had never experienced in her youth. It was a union built on partnership, understanding, and mutual respect, a stark contrast to the early days when she had felt invisible and voiceless. The final closure came unexpectedly. She returned to West Haven for a brief visit, drawn by a nostalgic pull she could not ignore. The Caraway house had been transformed into a modern investment property. The walls were polished, the gardens redesigned, and the laughter of another family filled the halls. Isla walked through the front gate, pausing at the steps she had once run across barefoot. She let herself feel the full weight of memory, sorrow, loss, gratitude. And then, slowly, she let it go. Standing in the driveway, she whispered a quiet goodbye to the house that had shaped her in both gentle and harsh ways. She had been a shadow once, a girl defined by circumstance, but now she was light, fully her own, unburdened by the past, unafraid of the future. Her story, once marked by grief, displacement, and the struggle for recognition, had come full circle. The little girl who had clutched a worn doll in the servants' quarters had grown into a woman who could claim space in the world with confidence and grace. Every obstacle, every moment of doubt had carved her into someone resilient, someone capable of not only surviving but thriving. And in the quiet reflection of that evening, as the city lights shimmered in the distance and the wind whispered through the trees, Isla understood the deepest lesson of her journey. Life's hardships are not the end of the story. They are the sculptors of strength, and the courage to rise again defines who we truly are. She turned, walking away from the past with steady steps, knowing that the life ahead, her life, was hers to shape without fear, without limitation, and with the quiet certainty that she had finally found her place in the world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends.